Dod the Avenger, a story written and read by D.E. Ladd. A puffy ball of ash-gray thundercloud exploded into being over the ocean about 100 yards offshore. In half a wink, it went from a giant orb of electrified dust to a blinding silver sphere. It rose out of the water, radiating a hazy blue, and when the light faded, a naked alien being stood upon the rippling surface. A handful of witnesses gaped in shock as the alien strode toward them over the shallow ocean waves. The water-walking creature stood about 7 feet tall, had smooth yellowish skin, and an apparent lack of reproductive organs. As it drew closer to the shoreline, swirling shades of green, blue, and orange played in its large eyes. The alien stopped on the sandy beach 5 feet away from the small gathering of onlookers. Its fingers and toes were long and jointed in multiple places, tipped with sharp, yellowish nails. It locked its gaze on one of the witnesses, a wiry teen with a mop of black hair named Jules, while its mouth twitched and its tiny nostrils flared in what looked like anger.
Maskavalak! Daduvagadak Mastavalak!
Jules stared at the alien, dumbstruck and horrified.
Maskavalak!
It repeated, flexing its long fingers. I don't understand, Jules sputtered.
Pastakukian dialect, huh? Not surprising in the least. Who's in charge around here?
The alien looked around at the other witnesses, several of whom ran off screaming. It spoke in a stiff and clear, high-pitched voice. The creature sounded intelligent, and based on its demeanor and tone, one would likely assume it was a male.
You hear me? Who's in charge around here?
The alien asked again. He angled his head downward with a frightful grimace, and resumed his examination of the beach, the people walking and riding by, the cars gliding by on the street, and the sparkling cityscape beyond.
This might be worse than I'd expected, he muttered.
Who are you? Jules started to back away. The alien snapped his head toward Jules and grinned horribly, exposing a wide row of sharp little teeth.
So, you do understand me. Why did you wait until now to speak? No matter. My name is Shushavajivaziant, or, in your primitive dialect, Dod. Now, who's in charge of all this?
He waved his large hand about. I don't... Before Jules could form a coherent sentence, Dod was making long strides toward the edge of the beach.
You there! Yes, you!
Dod closed in on a frumpy, middle-aged man who'd casually tossed a cigarette butt onto the sand. The man's eyes widened, and he mumbled a slew of obscenities.
What did you just do? I saw you. Pick it up right this instant, you hear me? What in the world do you think you're...
Dod's large eyes swept over the sand. Cigarette butts littered the entire beach.
Shaka Vastordmasha!
He seized the man by the shirt and hoisted him effortlessly into the air. Dod's eyes swirled as he glared at him.
Pick them up. Every last one.
The man's face went pale. A wet spot grew on his pants just below the belt. Some people ran away, while others crept closer to investigate, as if Dod were a domesticated bear or giraffe. Dod dropped the man onto the sand and surveyed the growing crowd of people surrounding him. The middle-aged smoker frantically scooped up cigarette butts, muttering prayers under his breath.
You there! Which one of you is in charge?
Dod asked the onlookers. Several more people screamed and ran away, but others smiled and drew closer.
Well?
Dod took the time to meet each pair of eyes. When no reply came, he heaved a sigh of disgust and made for the street.
This is hopeless.
Jules remained where he stood for a moment, then followed him. In the middle of the boulevard, Dod bent down and snatched up a greasy piece of paper blowing across the asphalt.
Whose is this?
He held up the bit of trash between two fingers. More terrified people ran away in a panic. Cars stopped in the street, drivers cursing the delay. Dod charged across the road to a small cluster of trees surrounded by a circular bench. He placed a hand on the largest of the 4 trees and cried out in alarm.
Whose animal has been urinating on this tree?
Every dog walker within earshot fled the scene. Red and blue lights suddenly spattered the congested area as 4 police cruisers approached from the west, joined by 3 more from the east. 2 black sedans arrived moments later, followed by a large navy blue truck carrying SWAT officers. The police ordered the crowds back as a dozen or so men brandishing weapons and radios inched toward Dod. Easy, fella, a stocky cop said, walking toward Dod with a taser in one hand and a baton in the other.
Are you in charge around here?
Dod asked, pointing at him. The stocky cop inched closer. That's right. Now, just relax. 5 more officers surrounded Dod. 3 men from SWAT hurried to nearby rooftops and settled into position. The men from the black sedans whispered into their radios that Dod had to be taken alive.
Well, Dod said, if you're in charge, I have a few things to—
Now! Yelled the stocky cop leading the charge. 6 police officers attacked Dod at the same time. Tasers sparked, batons thumped, and 2 muscular cops tried to tackle him to the ground. Dod stood in the middle, raising his arms as they tried to beat or subdue him. He would not be bruised, shocked, or moved. More like a lump of stone than a man, Dod looked down in confusion at their antics, his mouth twitching.
What are you doing? Stop that!
The officers sagged, as if the odd being had absorbed all their strength. Okay, it's too dangerous. Take him out! The captain's voice rang out over the officers' little radios. Huffing and puffing, the men stepped back, and the stocky cop gave the order to draw weapons. Ready? Aim! Dod wiggled his fingers, and their many weapons turned to dust.
Listen to me now. I wish to speak to the one in charge. Clearly, this person is not among you. So if you would be so kind as to lead me to him, I could deliver my message.
The stocky cop called for more weaponry, but before anyone could move, Dod huffed angrily and waved his hand in the air. Every officer and agent turned to dust, including those on the rooftops. Even a few curious civilians who got in the way disintegrated. Tires squealed. Cars bashed into each other as their drivers fled in panic. Screams filled the air as men and women ran in all directions. Dod sighed.
I was hoping to avoid this.
Jules stood frozen in shock as Dod stormed toward him.
You, boy! Come over here, Dod said. I need to speak to the one in charge. Do you know who he is?
Jules's mouth worked, but only tiny squeaks emerged.
Think now. This is important. You haven't got much time.
The President of the United States? He's our leader, I guess, Jules said.
Good, good. Now, where does he stay?
Behind Dod, someone had set a car on fire. People threw bottles and rocks at buildings. Gunshots and screaming echoed down the street. Jules blinked in a daze at the surrounding mayhem. Maryland. Washington, D.C.
Which way is that?
A car exploded less than 50 feet away. Jules threw his hands over his head and ducked. What? Dod grabbed Jules and shook him by the shoulders.
What direction, crazy man? We're running out of time.
East. That way, Jules said, pointing. Dod grabbed him by the arm.
You're coming with me.
He looked over his shoulder. A short man on a bicycle pulled a red wagon with a stolen television in it. A woman with long blonde hair shouted at the top of her lungs about how Jesus had returned as an alien and that he was really pissed.
Does your leader have any idea how crazy you people are? Dod asked.
A greenish rippling contorted the air, warping the fabric of reality and time. In a matter of seconds, they arrived just outside Baltimore. They landed near an industrial facility. Huge smokestacks pumped pollution into the air.
Is this it?
Dod asked, assessing the city in the distance. Dod's eyes flared with red and purple. He cursed and waved his hand. The entire monstrosity of concrete and steel collapsed into a pile of silvery white dust.
Okay, now where is this leader of yours?
Dod's eyes narrowed at their surroundings. The tiny white and red lights of cars zipped along the highways and over bridges. Dod grunted with disgust and whirled his hand in the air. The lights, the distant sounds, and even the smells vanished, leaving the air all around them instantly dark and silent. Jules struggled to breathe. Dod gave him a friendly pat on the back.
What's the matter with you? Come on now, we have no time for this nonsense. Let's go find this leader of yours.
After much sputtering and gasping for breath, Jules finally explained to Dod where to find Washington, D.C. They entered another warp and hopscotched through town after town before finally appearing on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The White House resembled a precious chunk of marble nestled in a twisted shrub of barbed wire. Makeshift fences rose 20 feet high around it. The grounds buzzed with mechanical weapons and armed soldiers, all scurrying about like busy ants eager to defend their queen. As Jules and Dod approached the perimeter, several soldiers aimed weapons at them and ordered them not to move. Dod shook his head and smirked. He waved his hand, and the entire battalion and all their weapons and equipment blew away like glitter tossed into the wind.
I assume he's in there,
Dod grumbled. Jules followed close behind as Dod approached the wall of barbed wire and wiggled his fingers, making a wide gap appear. They walked through and strolled up to the front door, which Dod eliminated. 6 Marines fired machine guns. Jules hid behind Dod, who waved his hand at them. Dust. 3 more soldiers charged them in the hallway. Dust. They approached a pair of double doors, which Dod disintegrated with a flick of his hand. The Secret Service fired on them. More dust. Inside the reinforced meeting room, a group of well-dressed men and women cowered, many of whom Jules recognized from the news. Behind a large desk sat the President of the United States, concern and outright fear marking his face.
"Are you the one in charge of all this?" Dod asked.
I'm...
Speak up! The time you waste is your own. Makes no difference to me.
The President swallowed, rose from his chair on shaky legs, and said, I am the President of these United States.
What the hell does that mean? These United States. I want the one in charge of all of it. The whole thing. Are you him or not?
Dod crossed his long arms. The President shrugged and shook his head. He looked to his advisors, who nodded in encouragement. There are many leaders all over the world who...
All right, never mind. Shut up.
Dod pinched his eyes closed in disgust.
Do you know who these other leaders are? Do you speak to them?
I do. Dod opened his eyes and glared at him.
Well, good. Listen to me, then. I don't know what the hell you think this is, but I saw a man throwing small bits of trash into the sand by the ocean. I picked up a piece of greasy paper blowing about on the ground, and I found a group of trees being urinated on by tethered animals. Pets, I believe you call them. All in one small area. Then I found that someone built a machine to put horrid fumes into the air. I took care of that one, but I suspect there's more work to be done here. I'm giving you 2 weeks.
A heavy sense of dread settled over the quiet room. The President and his aides exchanged worried glances. Dod paced the large room. He approached a shelf lined with fancy knickknacks and trophies. 2 weeks? The President asked. Dod shot him a glance.
That's right. 2 weeks, maybe less. Make sure everyone's prepared.
He turned back to the shelf, studying the shiny trophies and poking at other things, knocking them over. 2 weeks for what, exactly? The President asked.
For what? To get ready. Didn't you hear me? Make all the necessary mental preparations and so forth. You're going back. All of you.
Dod knocked something off the shelf and it shattered on the floor.
How long have you been here? He asked. About 1,000,000 years or so? 2 million? You probably don't even remember. It doesn't matter anyhow. Your little party is over. And don't think of doing anything stupid either. You try using your weapons when the others arrive, and I promise you, they won't be as patient as I've been.
Dod scowled as he passed a framed picture of the President.
You know, I have no idea why they keep making your kind. You're a lot more trouble than you're worth, I can tell you that. And believe me, I know. I wonder who let you out. I'll bet it was Burzel. Everything's a big joke to him. No matter. 2 weeks, President Man. Be sure to inform the others.
Dod made eye contact with each person in the room.
It would be very much appreciated if you could keep from screwing up anything else in the meantime. I'm sure I've got more than enough to deal with as it is.
He shook his head like a disappointed parent, heaved a labored sigh, and left. Jules, the President, and everyone else looked at each other with concern, not unlike scolded children whose punishment had only just begun. I hope you enjoyed this tale. If you'd like to hear more, please join my mailing list by visiting delad.com or send an email to info@delad.com. Get access to free content like this audiobook, short stories and previews of upcoming content, and automatic entries into monthly giveaways. Sign up now so you don't miss anything, and I will see you next time.